Welcome to Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. Our first Reddit post is from Reddit admin Dumbites7. You should always pay your accountant, especially if you've got skeletons in your closet. My buddy is an accountant. He has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs in 2 different cities. Client was always shady, always slow on payment, etc. I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker game that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy house, having a few beers, and he's bitching about non-payment. I ask who. He doesn't want to say. But it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name. We'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you. He then says, Scott is saying business is way down, and I think, that's odd. I've been going to one Scott place, and every Thursday is packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, really? I go, yay. He does this new cash discount, think 15 off your tab if you pay cash. My buddy goes, really? I tell him about my experience at Scott Bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, you going to Scott's bar to play poker? I said, yay. He says, can I join? I go, sure. He joins, we get a few drinks in, us lose our money at poker. My house is closer. He decides to crash there. On the way over, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discount is cause cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, pieces together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, etc. Keep in mind he has access to all this info. And he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts, a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business, to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, etc. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about $3,540. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year Scott has been underreporting his sales by $3,540, but he's also been underreporting his sales by at least $2,025 for years on end. Simply put, there is no way Scott is going through as much product and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides fuck getting repayment from Scott. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he'd earn from the IRS far outweighs the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15–30% of what they collect. So with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now, this part gets boring cause there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth. This went back and forth. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott, and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4–5 million. Now, my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4–5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675,000. $3 million. Keep in mind it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me. This comment is from Joe Yorsha. My takeaway: if I'm going to underreport my income by not reporting most of the cash payments I receive, I need to be sure to purchase a similar percentage of my supplies off the books. This comment is from Biridists, and pay your accountant on time. This comment is from Frostmorafrost. You aren't wrong. Accounting professionals knows very well the correlations between sales and cost of sales expenses as well. Of course, if you are buying stuff off the books. Now, a word from today's sponsor. Make sure to donate to my Patreon down in the description below to get early access to videos, participate in special patron-only events, and other goodies. Any amount of money is greatly appreciated. It makes it easier for me to make the content that I love making, and I know you guys love too. Now back to the video. Our next Reddit post is from Underwhelming Twin. Scam me for 80 for cleaning. On move out, I don't think so, Jack. TLDR at bottom. Background: about 10 years ago my landlord died. Or at least the person who owned the place we were renting. The property managers had been delightful, but whoever inherited wanted to sell, so the house was for sale. Enter a Jacko, call him Jacko, decides to buy the place. Now ours was the top floor attic converted into a suite of a house, less than 35 meters, 375 feet. The bathroom was literally where the stairs up to the top floor used to be. The place was tiny. Jack came to check out the place, as you should before buying a place. He had one of those Bluetooth earpieces in, and I can't even remember if he even acknowledged us. He spent about 3,045 seconds in our suite. Next time we hear from him is about a month later. Apparently he'd bought the place. He stops by to give us a notice of rent increase effective in 6 months legal minimum from $485 to $795. The place is not worth that much. We say nuts to that and decide to buy a house. Since WTH it's not much more per month. Surprise to anyone who's never bought a house, it was more than just mortgage payments. We give him all the required notice to move out. We moved and cleaned the place up really well. Mind you, when my partner moved in, it was not especially clean, and we happened to have the move-in inspection, which mentions this. Jack decides to try to scam us for 80 of our damage deposit for cleaning. He doesn't provide the required forms, just says, I'm going to hold 80 from your damage deposit for cleaning. We respond with no, you're not. Jack, assuming we need the cash for our next damage deposit or bills, and will settle for anything. Take this or I'm going to keep your whole deposit. Cue revenge. So he decides to just keep the whole deposit, $485. I file paperwork with the rentalsman. He's ordered to refund the whole deposit. But Jack decides not to pay. And the rentalsman doesn't have any enforcement powers. So I have to go to the local sheriff's office. They can send a legal demand letter for the deposit costs. But it will cost me $100,150, I forget up front. Sure, go ahead. Jack decides to ignore the sheriff's kindly letter. Sheriffs say that they can start proceedings to recover the debt costs, but I again have to pay upfront about $250, and it might take quite a while. I guess most people quit at this point. Being out of pocket $700, throwing more money at the problem and maybe having to wait months didn't appeal to them. And there's also a chance you never collect. I chose to pay the sheriffs. They sent another, less friendly letter to Jack. But here's the best part: now that they're recovering a debt, they're going to recover on all of the outstanding judgments against him. And apparently he has tried this shit before. They send him another couple letters: pay up or else. Jack chose else. Then they seize title to Jack's giant white SUV. I can't remember what it was, but not a cheap one. They didn't physically take it away or anything, but they gave him 30 days to pay all the judgments against him, or they would take it and sell it at auction. Somehow he all of a sudden found the money. My share 485 billion, 150,250,885. The other people who'd registered judgments but not paid to start the collections processes were about 5,000 more. I can't remember how long the whole process took, at least 6 months though. TLDR, landlord tries to scam us for 80 for cleaning when we move out. Ends up costing him almost 6,000. This comment is from a Jmixelit. This makes me sick, and am glad you won in the end. He had been doing it to other knowing most of the world to be able to pay the additional money to the sheriff's station and just give up. You got revenge not just for yourself, but everyone else this asset screwed over. Thank you, hero. This comment is from Smokinbeck. And this is why there should be treble damages on all items like this. It's not really a punishment, because he only had to pay what he was supposed to pay. If it would have cost him 18,000, then that would have been a true punishment. This comment is from Unitilvan01. This satisfied me in a way no man could ever do. That was Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. If you like this content, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified of new uploads. We upload new videos every day. Also subscribe to our Patreon, as that will help us a lot. See you next time.